Hello, everybody. This is Peter and Sylvia. We are, as you know, talking about issues and topics within the sphere of mental health. And today we're asking the question is poor mental health for life? So once you've had an episode of poor mental health, does that mean that you are now stuck with that situation for the rest of your life? Some would say yes. And I think you and I, Sylvia, would say no, not necessarily.
I agree, and that's based on my own personal experiences. As many of tuned into these before, you would know that I had my own episode quite a few years ago now. Pretty serious episode, but I did go for counselling and with medication. And I have shared this before. It does sound a little bit trite and cheesy, but during counselling, I absolutely wholeheartedly transformed into a completely different person and different outlook on life, different way of being. And I have not ever struggled with my mental health since. Because I believe I have a whole new outlook, a whole new way of thinking, being, doing, my whole way of being, my whole outlook, my whole person has changed. So based on my experiences, I believe that it's not for life. And I think you've also had a similar experience, I think, too, Peter.
I have. I spent 25 years with a depression that was growing and growing in strength, and I didn't know that it was depression. I had help that was very useless. Then I found somebody else who really did help me, and I was ready to fly solo after 8 sessions, and I did a lot of work in between sessions. But since then, I have never experienced days and periods like I did before I had the help that was effective. So, are we the outliers? Are we the ones who escaped the clutches of poor mental health? I don't think so. But maybe it's how we define what is mental health, what is poor mental health, what is crisis. Do we actually know what we're talking about when we talk about mental health?
Mm.
Because it's also linked with our physical health.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, we should talk about health, but we've been so conditioned to thinking about this part of the body and the rest of the body. So I personally, I think you are not labeled for life. You're not doomed, as it were, just because you've taken a dip. Because we have to understand, why did your mental health suffer in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
So if you fix that situation, would it not be reasonable to expect your mental health to stabilize and be good?
It's interesting points that you've raised because, first of all, what popped into my head was how do we define mental health? Because each person's definition of mental health may be different. Although, and I'm almost like used to regurgitating it now because I do it on so many different presentations that I do, but the World Health Organization's definition goes something like that it's not just the absence of a mental disorder, defined, it goes something like defined as a state of well-being, which every individual realizes their potential, copes with the normal stresses of life, something about works productively and fruitfully, and able to make a contribution to the community and society. And for me, this is one of the key ones, enables sound decision and informed choices. And as we know, mental health is a continuum. We have good, great, marvelous, thriving, blossoming, blooming, whatever phrase you want to have at one end. And we go through, if you think of it in traffic lights, green, amber, red, we go into the struggling, surviving, not so good. And then we go into the poor, they go to crisis, like you and I have experienced. I wouldn't call it a crisis, but other people may call it a crisis. And then you have the diagnoses. Now that can be with medication and counselling, make a full recovery, and or long-term management with help of various sort of self-help or lifestyle changes, and even supporting with medication, as people do with, say, blood pressure or rheumatoid arthritis or something. But equally, picking up another point that you've made, some people's mentally healthy state may be a heightened sense of anxiety or a slightly lower mood than other people. So how do we know what each person's normal is? Only me as an individual, you as an individual know. And as you say, we can all have, I don't know, bad day, off day, a day when things have, goodness me, I'd rather not go out of bed this morning because everything seems to have gone wrong. But that doesn't mean we've got poor mental health. We're just on that fluctuation. We all fluctuate up and down that continuum. We'd all like to stay in the green. I know when I start to slip in the orange because things aren't going so well, and I have a bit of reflection and get back in the green. It doesn't mean to say I've got poor mental health. I'll just throw in one thing. I remember reading quite a few years ago now, the Mental Health Foundation cited that 70% of people have a crisis or an episode, whatever phrase, make a full recovery. So it's not just you and I anecdotally talking about this. It's proven that it isn't for life.
And that's where sort of these global statistics come in quite handy, because we all have our own perspective, and we can talk to the next 5 people and they will say, well, it stays with me for life, because that's their experience. But I think a lot of it is to do with perception and expectations, that we expect, having been treated for a poor mental health episode. You and I have been probably taught to not talk about cure, because, that's a no-no word.
Yeah.
I have cured anxieties and phobias. I have. The people out there walking, and they can tell me today, years after, that they don't have this fear of birds or fear of heights anymore. So you can cure things, but it is a perception that maybe people think, oh, I've had a bad, rough ride here, and now I expect everything else from now on to be smooth sailing, plain sailing. And life is not like that, is it? We get the knocks and the scrapes and the scars from life when something happens. And we should be allowed to feel anger. We should be allowed to have a blue day or 2 and maybe 3, but then somehow we pull ourselves out of it again. We only do talk about depression if it's persisted for 2 weeks or more. So we are allowed to have a really, really crap period where everything just seems to go against us. That's normal. That's how life is. Anyone who's in business will know that not every day in business is a glorious, high selling, high performing day. So why would we expect that out of life in general? So I think a lot of it is to do with perception, and also distinguishing between what constitutes mental good health, not so good, downright poor, and disastrous. It is very individual, because no 2 people are alike.
There's a couple of points I'd like to pick up on there, Peter. Perception. Once again, I think if people were more cognizant, more confident, more knowledgeable, educated, whatever phrase, about what mental health is and what it isn't. Of course, we do have that sort of variation. Everyone's experience will be different. But again, if we have that perception that, that there can be a full recovery. On the matter of perception, one thing that I actually get quite cross about is when people do then find out or know, or I share with them that I have had a poor mental health episode years ago. They almost do not believe that I'm fully recovered. And that makes me cross, because I am fully recovered. And that's not and not a sort of defensive thing or in denial. I am fully recovered. And it makes me cross when people go, oh, but you can't be. Because, once you've had it once, you'll always have it. And it really is not the case. If we can break down and break that break, B-R-E-A-K, and break, B-R-A-K-E, that connection, the once you've had it, you always have it. In terms of recovery, why is it that people think that once you've had it, you'll never recover? If I have an infection, I take antibiotics, I make a full recovery. Why can we not accept that we can make a full recovery? And I think they're the 2 points that I would like to make there, that we can recover. We recover from other things with the right help and the right support, and also recognizing where we are on that scale. You know, for many years, you know, like you, Peter, you recognise you knew you were depressed for, was it 25 years? I didn't know that I was even depressed. I thought everyone felt like I did from time to time. It
So
wasn't
did
until
I.
I started
I,
feeling,
I
something
didn't know.
right. Yeah, exactly. Don't know.
The couple of points you made there, Sylvia, is I've never had this thrown at me. Well, are you sure you have recovered? I
I
am.
have. Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
Mm,
So luckily, I've never had to deal with that kind of comment.
mm.
And I also think, in fairness, we need to be careful not to compare and contrast brain
Indeed.
and body too much, because they are different
Mm.
structures, they are different organs. And whilst you can recover quickly from an infection with the right medication, the brain may take longer to learn how to think differently about life. And if you've had a traumatic experience previous in your life, changes in the brain will have happened. I mean, neuroscience is a wonderful thing. It teaches us a lot these days. So things may take longer, and we can think, oh, but because it takes longer, we never recover. And if we then have a bad day, oh, we have a relapse.
Mm.
But that is not necessarily the case. So we have to accept that dealing with emotional trauma and poor mental health is different by nature from poor physical health or physical trauma. But it is possible to recover. Of course it is. Um, Partly because the person, him or herself, wants to recover. And that's one of those where I get into deep water sometimes when I say, well, you have to do your bit to heal and to recover. You can't expect some magic pill to do it for you. So if the mindset, if the attitude isn't there to want to recover, but to prefer to stay in poor me mode or in victim mode, then it will take longer or it will not happen. Again, there might be somebody screaming at me saying, what a flippant remark to make. But I have seen it in my clients, those who work hard between sessions because they want it, they recover. Those who expect me to do it for them and do nothing in between sessions, they take longer and they sometimes just give up.
And it is from I'm talking from my own personal experience as well now here. It is blooming hard work to, in my case, and probably yours, to recover, to put the work in, to, in effect, go to hell and back, to have the drains up, have a look, you know, and explore absolutely everything. It is hard work. Although there are many, I know you said about comparing to the physical, but again, there is an element of there are many people who do need long-term medication to support their mental health. And that's also fine too, because that's no different, as we said, from the physical, someone taking long-term medication for a physical condition. But what we're talking about here is this point that once you've had a poor mental health episode, you will always have, you know, poor mental health. Or as you said there, we can have a bad day. It doesn't mean it's a relapse. It's just a bad day. And I think, again, that's a great point, that sort of disconnecting that connection. I've had a bad day or I've had a relapse. No, I just had a bad day. Yeah.
So you and I agree. Other people watching this
Finally.
may or may not. So it would be great to hear what your experiences are. Sylvia and I think that if we could not recover, we would have a world full of mentally ill people. So that is not the case. Let us know what you think. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye now.
Here we go. Bye bye.